people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per a tweet from Michael Benson. The World Boxing Council have now officially ordered Devin Haney to defend his WBC Super Lightweight World title versus Sandor Martin next. First bid scheduled for June 18th if the two teams don't reach a deal.
He's still champion?
Yes, the WBC so decided that Devin Haney should remain WBC champion at Super Lightweight because Ryan didn't win the title from him. Ryan didn't make the weight. He came in 3 pounds over.
Why didn't they just vacate the title?
Why do the cucumbers taste better pickled? I don't know.
Ask them.
Devin is still WBC champion, and he has a mandatory challenger in the queue he has to satisfy. We knew this going in. We knew this going into the Ryan Garcia fight that Devin was expected to win.
He lost.
But he's still on the hook. I remember reading earlier this year, in January, that the people at Top Rank had entered into a co-promotional deal to co-promote Sandor Martin moving forward. I'm going to assume that that deal is still active and actionable. However, I don't imagine they want to put this fight on.
Why?
I don't imagine they want to be on the hook to pay for it. Why would they? It's pure boxer versus pure boxer.
Not a very good stylistic matchup. Doesn't make for a good TV fight.
Devin Haney is going to want in excess of 7 figures to defend his title on their platform, and you're going to have to pay Sandor, whatever you have to pay Sandor, for what doesn't make for a great TV fight. This is not the kind of fight you want to have to break the bank over.
But Top Rank is in the running. They did sign Sandor, they do co-promote him, and they're in the running to host the show. If they want to host the show, I think that Matchroom is as well.
They don't have Devin under contract, locked into a multi-fight deal, but they do still work with him, off and on. So maybe they end up doing the fight. The way it looks, Top Rank is in the running to do it, and Matchroom is in the running to do it. Though if I had to guess, I think Matchroom would do it before Top Rank.
I think Devin would be the favorite going in.
Even though he just lost to Ryan Garcia.
Yeah.
Because Sandor is nothing like Ryan Garcia. Ryan had a height advantage over Devin. Sandor doesn't. Sandor is shorter. Ryan is a puncher. Ryan does have power. Sandor doesn't.
Sandor's not known for knockouts. He's only got a 35% KO ratio.
15 knockouts in 45 professional bouts. That's the way that breaks down. So if Ryan Garcia, who has power and is bigger than Devin, if he couldn't knock out Devin, Sandor won't knock out Devin.
That's even less likely.
In spite of what he just endured at the hands of Ryan Garcia, I think that Devin would still be the favorite going in. 2 pure boxers.
Ugh.
That stinker with Francis Bartholomew and Robert Easter almost immediately comes to mind. That has to be, by and large, one of the worst, and I mean the worst, one of the most boring fights I've ever seen, because that's what happens, or what could happen, when you put 2 pure boxers, 2 outside fighters, in the ring with each other.
Devin didn't try to fight Ryan on the outside.
That is true. Devin does break character, at least more than Sandor. Devin, at times, to his own detriment, he tries to come forward. He tries to bang in the booth. We saw that in the Jorge Linares fight, where he got rocked by a big right hand.
Right.
We saw that in the Vasily-Lomachenko fight that many people think he lost. I think he lost.
Right.
And we saw that more recently with Ryan Garcia just a few weeks ago.
Devin does break character.
He's not coming forward, who he is hanging back. That at his very best, he's a pure boxer staying behind his jab, using his height and using his length. But there are times when he steps into it, tries to come forward, and pays for it.
He's not coming forward, who he is hanging back.
So how does he fight Sandor?
He's got options.
He can stay behind his jab, hang back, set traps, make Sandor come to him because he's the shorter guy with shorter arms. He can fight him that way, fighting a better version of the fight that Sandor normally fights, because normally it's Sandor hanging back. Normally it's Sandor moving lateral and boxing from the outside. But against a taller, longer fighter
with longer arms,
it's going to be harder to do. So if Devin Haney just hangs back, draws Sandor out, forces Sandor to come to him, he's in his element, and he'll be doing what he does best.
Where Sandor would be out of his element and out of his comfort zone, what would be a test of Sandor's ability to adapt, that normally you're the boxer. Can you adapt to being the puncher?
I'm not convinced he can. It's for that reason that I think Devin would go into that fight the favorite, and it's for that reason that I would favor Devin to win that fight. My question is he going to go through with it? Is he going to stay at 140? Because that looked like a hard cut, a hard weight cut going into that Ryan Garcia fight just a few weeks ago. He did look drawn.
Just 2 fights into his 140-pound campaign. Has Devin Haney already outgrown the weight?
It's possible that he has. I don't know that he's going to stay there. And a Sandor Martin fight, in spite of it being ordered, is not so big a fight and so important a fight that he should kill himself to stay there. We'll see what he does, if he does. And he fights Sandor on either the Matchroom side of things or maybe the Top Rank side of things. Who knows? I'd still have Devin Haney winning. I'd have Devin winning a points decision.
But I don't think it would be an entertaining fight.
2-star fight, 2 stars. Not because it's a foregone conclusion, but because the aesthetic of the match really wouldn't be entertaining. 2 guys, 2 pure boxers. Neither one punches all that hard. Neither one punches all that much, has much of a work rate.
2-star fight.
Just in keeping with the theme of all things World Boxing Council, former unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr., who's still coming off that demoralizing loss to Terrence Crawford.
He's number 1.
Almost a year out from the demoralizing beating that he took at 147, they have so elected to give him a number 1 spot at 154, ahead of several other fighters who have a lot more time in at this weight than Errol does.
Dubious.
It's a rather dubious decision, to say the least, to award Errol a number 1 spot at a new weight when he got destroyed in the previous one.
If he were undisputed, I could see.
Or at least coming off a win, but he's coming off a loss and close to a year of inactivity, and for that, the WBC makes him their number 1 contender, bringing him that much closer to that Sebastian Fundora fight. It's important to note that the WBC's interim champion is the Ukraine's own Sergei Bohachuk, who boxed Brian Mendoza to a lopsided decision, becoming WBC interim champion in the process, though in all likelihood, given the WBC's reputation and how they like to do things, Errol might get a shot at Sebastian before Sergey. You all know he was in attendance. He was ringside for the Sebastian Fundora versus Tim Tszyu fight.
After the fight, he climbed in the ring, and you know what it was.
See what they're doing. Behind the scenes, they're trying to make an Errol Spence Jr. versus Sebastian Fundora fight.
My thoughts.
After the Tim Tszyu fight, they said that Sebastian Fundora would be out for a while due to the injuries that he sustained in the Tim Tszyu fight. Busted up nose, busted mouth.
They said that Sebastian won't be coming back until sometime later on this year. Fall, winter.
They said that they would give Tim Tszyu a rematch upon Sebastian's return, but apparently Tim doesn't want to wait that long, which is why he's so elected to fight Virgil Ortiz in August instead, which frees up Sebastian Fundora to have that Errol Spence Jr. fight, especially now that Errol's ranked at number 1. But lest we forget, Sebastian is still under orders to face the winner of Crawford versus Madrimov going down in August. Whoever wins, Sebastian's on the hook to fight them. So in all likelihood, he will drop the brown belt, the WBO title, hang on to the green one, and see about defending it against Errol.
That's what I've been saying.
The powers that be are working their magic and pulling strings behind the scenes to get Errol Spence Jr. a title shot that he doesn't really deserve, and a title shot that I'm not even sure he's ready for. The beating that he sustained at 147 and the amount of time it's taking him to come back, all while he's between trainers now that he's not with Derek James anymore. They have a court battle coming up.
We talked about that.
The look of it is clandestine chicanery to get Errol Spence Jr. a title shot he so clearly doesn't deserve, but is he actually ready for one? That you can do whatever you have to do to get him the shot, but is he actually ready for it?
Physically.
Mentally. Errol Spence Jr., who doesn't believe in tune-up fights, even though he needs one, it would be ideal for him to have a rebound fight in between now and the time he faces Sebastian Fundora, one would think.
Ideally.
If they are planning on doing a fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Sebastian Fundora, it would presumably go down much later on in the year towards the end of it. But I question the state of the PBC on Amazon, as they would be the ones doing this show. So many of their fighters are leaving, jumping ship. So many of their fighters are all tied up in that August show that His Excellency, Mr. Turki Al-Sheikh, is bankrolling. And I question,
How much longer have they got?
you have to assume that it's the people at the PBC behind the scenes pulling the strings to make a Spence versus Fundora fight happen. You have to assume it's them, but if it is them, how much longer have they got?
We're 5 months into this year, and they've only done 2 shows, just 2, and both were pay-per-views.
There doesn't seem to be a regular schedule of fights like what you used to see when they were on Showtime, like what you used to see when they were on Fox. They seem to be doing pay-per-views, just pay-per-views exclusively.
Can they survive like this?
They are operating at a much reduced capacity than they were in previous years, more so now seemingly relegated to just doing pay-per-views exclusively, only 2 5 months into this year, presumably only 3 6 months into it. And what are they going to do in July? What are they going to do in August?
What are they gonna do?
It's really not a guarantee that Canelo Alvarez stays with them in September to do his very next fight on their side of things in September.
What if he doesn't?
I'm just looking at the state of affairs at the PBC right now, knowing they're the ones maneuvering Errol behind the scenes to get a shot at Sebastian Fundora. How long will it take them to make that fight a reality?
How do they survive until then?
And even if they can, given the beating that Errol just sustained at the hands of Terence Crawford last year, does he survive another one with Sebastian Fundora? Because if they're planning on making this fight for the tail end of this year, it will have been well over a year's time in between Errol's last 2 fights. He's gonna have ring rust to shake off.
Would you trust him to win that fight later on this year?
Because they're not gonna put him in the ring with Sergey Bohachuk, the WBC interim champion. In all likelihood, they want him to skip ahead of Sergey, fight Sebastian straight away.
Sergey's a high risk, low reward.
Dangerous fight, naturally bigger, volume puncher, pressure fighter. They're gonna allow Errol to skip him and fight Sebastian straight away, though even if he does he win? Do you trust him to? That if it takes Errol until the end of this year to get back into the ring, will he be in any condition to win the WBC title from Sebastian? That's the question. Finally, in men's middleweight news, Janibek Alimkhanuly is set to defend his title in July. A doubleheader is being planned for July 13th in Las Vegas, featuring Janibek Alimkhanuly defending his unified middleweight championship against Andre Mikhaliovich and Raymond Muratalla versus former champion Tevin Farmer, sources told ESPN on Friday. Alimkhanuly is slated to put his IBF and WBO 160-pound titles on the line versus IBF mandatory challenger Mikhaliovich in the top rank on ESPN main event at the Palms Casino and Resort. ESPN's number 1 middleweight, Alimkhanuly, last fought in October when he scored a 5th-round TKO victory over then-champion Vincenzo Gualtieri to add the IBF title to his collection.
My thoughts.
Even though this is a mandatory challenger and Janibek is on the hook, he has to satisfy him. I doubt this fight does all that much for Janibek's profile. That's the problem that this guy's got. He's willing to fight the fights.
He is.
He's willing to fight the fighters.
He is.
But are they willing to fight him? For well over a year now, Janibek Alimkhanuly and Carlos Adames have been going back and forth on social media about potentially fighting each other. But up until this point, Carlos was not a champion. In the past week, he was elevated to full WBC champion in the middleweight division.
No, he's a full-fledged champion like Janibek is a full-fledged champion.
And upon that news breaking earlier this week, the first thing that Janibek did was take to his social media and start calling a guy out for a unification match. But Carlos Adames seems to have lost his voice. He's not responding as quickly as he was before, back when he wasn't a champion. Now that he is,
It's a problem.
Carlos Adames is rumored to be making his first defense of his newly obtained WBC title against U.S. Olympian Terrell Gausha on the undercard of what is supposed to be the Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight.
That's in June.
Whereas Alimkhanuly versus Mikhaliovich is set to go down the following month in July. So they are more or less on the same schedule. One fights in June, the other fights in July. If both make it through it, the ideal situation would be to make them fight.
Make the fight.
Carlos Adames is best described as a very skilled boxer-puncher. He's got athleticism, ability, and power. Does a bit of switch hitting too. He can fight orthodox, he can fight southpaw, whereas Janibek, he's a southpaw. Just a southpaw.
He's a boxer-puncher too.
They both are. Who's better with that base style? There's really only one way to find out. The Janibek Alimkhanalai looked quite human and quite limited opposite the ring, the United Kingdom zone, Denzel Bentley. That was a fight that Janibek was widely favored to win, but not just win by way of knockout, because Denzel had been knocked out before. He'd been knocked out by Felix Cash, and if Felix can knock you out, Janibek should be able to knock you out, but he didn't.
He struggled.
At the same time, Carlos Adames, who I hadn't forgotten, dropped a decision to Brazil's own Patrick Teixeira.
This was years ago, back when Carlos was with Top Rank.
And I remember that Carlos was highly touted up until that point, up until that loss. I remember that he got hurt. I remember that he lost the decision. I think Carlos is a more dynamic fighter than Janibek Alimkhanalai. More bells and whistles, but not more durability. I don't trust Carlos's chin. I don't trust Carlos's engine. That if he's pushed, and he's not the one doing all the pushing.
He'll gas out.
In terms of power, the edge and power, I'd say Carlos has about as much power as Janibek Alimkhanalai. I mean, I think in terms of power, they're both about the same. But I suspect that Janibek is a more durable fighter than Carlos Adames. That when the punches start to land and they're taking effect, Carlos will get worn out.
I favor Janibek to win.
Though for Janibek to win, or for Carlos to prove me wrong, there has to be a fight. And therein lies a dilemma. How do we know that now that Carlos is a champion, he's going to keep the same energy he had before he became a champion?
Nobody ever does these days.
Keep the same energy? When he wasn't a full-fledged champion, he had this and that to say about Janibek on his social media. But now that he's a champion and he actually has something to lose, does he still want the Janibek fight? Does he still want it as bad as he wanted it before? Did he even really want it before? Or was it all just an act?
Could break down two ways.
If Carlos beats Terrell Gausha in June and Janibek beats Mikhaliovich in July, you could do the unification match between them, but don't forget about Lara, Arislandi Lara, the only other champion at this weight in possession of the WBA title.
He's there too.
If Carlos beats Terrell, what does he do? Does he pursue Janibek, or does he pursue his PBC stablemate, Arislandi Lara? For what it's worth, I think the Janibek fight pays more than the Lara fight.
Yeah, but the Lara fight doesn't force him to cross the street.
He can stay right there on the PBC side of things if he fights Lara, and Lara is a noticeably older fighter than Janibek Alimkhanalai, so that's the virtue. Not sure what Carlos is gonna do. If he beats Terrell Gausha, does he unify with Lara, or does he unify with Janibek?
I'm not against either fight because they're both necessary. To crown an undisputed champion at this weight, somebody has to fight Lara.
So if it's Carlos, then let it be Carlos.
Or if it's Janibek. If Janibek can finagle a situation where he fights Lara, I'm okay with that too.
The bottom line is, they have to fight. All of these champions have to fight because none among them have so much of a profile they can stand alone. They have to unify.